Hello everybody and welcome to the Showcase, where we take a look at articles on Wookieepedia, the Star Wars wiki. Today on the Showcase we take a look at Tepoh, so let's get started. Quote,
It took me some time to figure myself out, and I think I'll serve Naboo better this way. I like being myself.
Tepoh to Sashay. Tepoh was a gender-fluid human hailing from the mid-rim planet Naboo. The Naboo worker eventually joined the employ of the Naboo Diplomatic Corps and explored the galaxy outside their homeworld. In 22 BBY, recruiters working for Senator Padme Amidala were intrigued by Tepoh's skill set and invited Zere to apply for a position as her handmaiden. Although the handmaiden Dorme was impressed by Tepoh during their interview, she eventually chose other candidates to serve as her employer's aides and recommended Zere to her former colleague, Representative Sashay, a member of the Naboo Planetary Legislative Assembly. After an interview, Sashay opted to hire Tepoh and bring Zere with her on a mission to the planet Carlinus focused on renegotiating a bill affecting the Chomel sector. While aboard a transport vessel, the aide studied a Carlini guidebook to prepare for the upcoming diplomatic meetings and conversed with their employer about their gender identity. Upon their arrival on Carlinus, the representative introduced Tepoh to Harley Jaffan, a former associate of Sashay's she had worked with during her time as Amidala's handmaiden. Afterward, Jaffan escorted the pair to Governor Kelma's house in Carlini City. Tepoh exchanged greetings with Kelma and then worked to assist Sashay in her efforts to draft a legislative compromise to the bill they were working on. The aide assisted their employer in the rest of their time on Carlinus, helping Sashay during diplomatic meetings and other projects. Following the mission's completion, Tepoh departed Carlinus with their employer. Biography. Diplomatic Corps. Quote,
What made you want to be a handmaiden? I didn't necessarily. I didn't know it was a possibility. But when I was recommended for the position, I will admit that I was curious enough to take the interview.
Sashay and Tepoh. The gender-fluid human Tepoh was born on the mid-rim planet Naboo. During the Republic era, the Naboo worker began serving in the employ of the Diplomatic Corps headquartered on their homeworld. While in the Corps, Ze engaged in several assignments that required Zere to serve as both an aide and part of a protective detail. At some point, Tepoh took the time to travel the galaxy outside Naboo. In 22 BBY, Tepoh's work in the Diplomatic Corps caught the attention of recruiters working for Naboo's former queen, Senator Padme Amidala. Ze was invited to an interview by Amidala's handmaiden Dorme to assess whether Ze would be well-suited aide for the senator. Although initially hesitant, Tepoh attended at least one interview out of curiosity and left a positive impression on Dorme. However, Dorme selected other candidates to serve as Amidala's handmaidens, reflecting that Tepoh's diverse skill set was too similar to hers. Afterward, Dorme sent a recommendation for Tepoh to her former colleague, Representative Sashay, who worked for the Naboo Planetary Legislative Assembly. Meeting Sashay. Quote,
Representative Sashay, how wonderful to see you again. Welcome to Carlinus, and to my house. And welcome too, young person. How may I address you? My name is Tepoh. I'm the representative's new aide.
Kelma and Tepoh. Shortly after, Sashay contacted Tepoh and arranged for Zere to have an interview with her for an aide position. The representative inquired why Tepoh had pursued a handmaiden role with Amidala, learning that Ze had not initially been interested in the role, but had instead been sought out for an interview by the senator's recruiters. The pair amiably discussed what serving as Amidala's handmaiden had been like for Sashay during the senator's reign as queen, and Tepoh expounded on how Ze had grown into affirming Zere's gender identity and sense of self. Trusting Dorme's recommendation of Zere, Sashay opted to hire Tepoh as her new aide. Afterward, Ze prepared to travel with their new employer to the planet Carlinus on a diplomatic mission to renegotiate a bill affecting the Chomel sector, a sector of space containing both Carlinus and Naboo. Tepoh helped pack the representative's belongings for the journey and organize travel plans, pleasing Sashay with their attention to detail. While aboard their transport vessel to Carlinus, Tepoh read through a Carlini guidebook as they traveled to become more familiar with the planet's culture before the diplomatic meetings, as they had not visited the world before. Upon arrival on Carlinus, Sashay introduced Tepoh to Harley Jaffan, a former associate she had worked with as Amidala's handmaiden. When Jaffan escorted the pair to the home of Carlinus Governor Kelma in Carlini City, Tepoh excitedly took in their surroundings as they passed through the city. After arriving, Kelma welcomed Sashay and her aide to Carlinus and greeted Tepoh after learning their name. As their employer began working with the governor, Tepoh provided the representative with her official legislative recording device, datapad, and stylus. Diplomatic engagements. Quote,
There's no profit in freeing enslaved people. Not in credits, anyway. Morally, it's wonderful. But it's a bit uncharacteristic, don't you think? Maybe someone's been waiting for an opportunity. I'm not complaining. And I don't think Governor Kelma is either. I'm certainly not upset about it. Just a little bit perplexed.
Sashay and Tepoh about several supply corporations. On the first day of meetings, Tepoh joined Sashay during the early dinner break. As they speedily took notes on their datapad, Kelma requested a private conversation with Sashay. Sashay suggested they depart and take a break from screens to rest, followed by a tour of the gardens. Although the dismissal was abrupt, Tepoh was familiar with political dealings and took no offense. When Tepoh was away, Sashay met with Carlini citizens to hear their stories of liberation from slavery and wished Tepoh had joined her. When Sashay returned to the city, curious to discover who was responsible for the liberation of the individuals, Tepoh began working with her to plot the origin planets of the freed individuals on a galactic map. After some hours, near midnight, Tepoh proposed a theory as they projected a three-dimensional map from their table into the air. They theorized that the connection of the Outer Rim planets centered around the front lines of the Clone Wars conflict between the Republic and the Separatists. Sashay confirmed each world was affected by Separatist incursions that received a response from the Republic Army and where Republic law did not exist. Tepoh then suggested that small, merchant-run companies who had initiated transporting supplies due to the war were responsible for freeing enslaved individuals. After the conversation ended, Tepoh yawned, and Sashay sent Zer to bed. Later, Tepoh joined Sashay as the community of representatives discussed amendments to the legislation. During the economics discussion, Tepoh informed Sashay when matters required her attention. After the successful reworking of the bill, Tepoh joined Sashay at the celebration, accompanied with their datapad, where Zeh informed her that all their belongings had been packed and Zeh was ready to schedule the pair's departure in 30 minutes. They then left Carlinus together. Personality and traits. Quote,
Sometimes I wake up and want to be perceived as some degree of female, but sometimes I don't.
Tepoh. As a highly motivated and organized aide, Tepoh enjoyed paying attention to detail. Zed took great pride in their work and took strides to improve their professional skill set. Tepoh felt strongly about the fluidity of their gender identity, sometimes wishing to be perceived as female and sometimes not. By the time Zed served as Sashay's aide, Tepoh had considered themselves comfortable with their internal sense of self. Although Zed was initially nervous about applying for the position of Amidala's handmaiden, Zed found great comfort in Sashay's assurance that Zed would have made a great aide for the senator. Tepoh appreciated being praised for their work and was surprised when Kelma acknowledged their presence at diplomatic meetings alongside Sashay and asked how to address their skills and abilities. Quote,
Someone from the senator's office keeps an eye on everyone in the diplomatic corps. If the proper skill set shows up, she gets a notification.
Sashay on Tepoh's selection as a handmaiden candidate. After gaining experience in the Naboo diplomatic corps, Tepoh proved talented at managing Sashay's hectic legislative schedule. Zeb was a hard-working, detail-oriented individual who was proud of their professional performance. Dorme considered Tepoh's skill set similar to the Naboo royal handmaidens, a group she felt was multi-talented and versatile. Equipment. As Sashay's aide, Tepoh's wardrobe was well stocked with functional clothing that reflected their personality. Zeh cared deeply about their choice of attire and was only willing to accept jobs that would allow Zeh to dress as they wished. When Sashay interviewed Zeh wore a flowing green skirt. While on a mission to Carlinus, Zeh donned a silver embroidered blazer and dark blue trousers. On the same trip, Tepoh sported a flowy, knee-length tunic with several pockets, which they used to carry several items. Tepoh's duties as Sashay's attendant required Zeh to use and carry numerous devices throughout their day. Zeh owned a datapad, which they used to take meeting notes swiftly. Tepoh also acquired a Carlini guidebook and studied it en route to Carlinus. Additionally, Zeh carried Sashay's datapad, official legislative recording device, and stylus for their employer and provided them upon request during negotiations. Behind the scenes. Quote, Tepoh will look different depending on the gender they're presenting at any given time, but during the book, Zer is aiming to look unobtrusive, so Zer dresses in handmaiden-ish layers without the hood. E.K. Johnston about Tepoh. Tepoh appeared in Queen's Hope, a 2022 young adult novel written by E.K. Johnston. In response to a fan's inquiry, Johnston indicated that while she did not envision Tepoh to look similar to any particular person, she imagined that Ze had long hair that Ze styled in an updo. The author also expressed that she felt Tepoh's choice of clothing was often fancier than Harley Jafan's, expounding that their overall look depended on the gender Ze was presenting as at any given time, mirroring the aide's wish for their clothing to reflect their fluid gender identity. In 2020, Johnston indicated on Twitter that Amidala would welcome the addition of a non-binary handmaiden on her team. The author later integrated this concept into Queen's Hope with Tepoh's introduction as a non-binary interview candidate for the Senator's team, which included pros supportive of an individual of any gender, not just girls, being able to take up the role as long as they could fulfill their duties. Johnston considered the tale of how she had developed Tepoh one of her favorite stories to tell. She indicated that Ze was present in the first draft of Queen's Hope and initially used both he and she pronouns alternated within scenes to reflect the aide's gender fluidity. Eventually, the author chose to create a new neo-pronoun set for Tepoh to simplify scenes for readers. At the suggestion of Jennifer Heddle from Lucasfilm Story Group, Johnston agreed to change from the original set of pronouns she created to Ze Zer pronoun set, which was first introduced within Star Wars canon by author Chuck Wendig in Star Wars The Aftermath trilogy, and used for the non-binary pilot Elodie McGravena. While writing, Johnston specifically paired Tepoh with Sasha because she was the most independent of Amidala's handmaidens still working in the political scenes, and noted that Dorme's passing of their details to the representative was intentional. When the author sent in the draft, Story Group asked her if she would be willing to make Tepoh a trans character instead. However, after thinking about the topic for a few moments, Johnston indicated she would not be willing to, as the character's gender was not static during their interactions with Sasha and their dialogue was very dependent on their gender fluidity. The author then added the transgender clone trooper's sister to the second draft in addition to Tepoh to meet their request, an addition that was celebrated by the story group's Emily Shukani, who she had several conversations regarding the aide with. The author included Tepoh in the book specifically to be a character who could not be Amidala's shadow in the way that Sabe was, not because of lack of physical similarity, but for personal and emotional reasons. She considered the aide's role integral to Sabe's development in Queen's Hope, despite the two never crossing paths as a person who could not be Amidala's double, but was nonetheless capable of great things. When writing Tepoh's scenes, Johnston was inspired by a scene including the gender-fluid character Alex from the second Magnus Chase books, The Hammer of Thor, in which Alex's gender changed several times within a scene. She wished to capture the same essence as Alex's inclusion in that Tepoh would wake up some mornings and be capable of putting on a dress to be Amidala's shadow but be incapable of such on other mornings, which would preclude Zer from the position of handmaiden when body doubling was needed. Thanks everyone for watching, and we hope you've enjoyed this video. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and until next time, this is Spooky Willow signing off, and may the Force be with you.